Okay, so in chapter 8, we are going to talk about alcohol. So as usual, we've got this list of learning outcomes. And again, by the time that we are completed with the chapter, hopefully you can go through this list and recognize that we've hit them all. And so here we go. As an introduction, more than 50% of adults in the United States report regularly consuming alcohol, which means the consumption of at least 12 drinks per calendar year. Okay, 25% of those that do drink engage in at least one day of heavy drinking per year. And heavy drinking, binge drinking, is going to be 5 or more drinks for men and 4 or more drinks for women. The thing to remember about alcohol is that it is not an essential nutrient, so it is not something that our bodies need. It is not a macronutrient, nor is it a micronutrient. However, it does supply energy. And so it provides 7 kilocalories per gram, which is a lot, right? More than carbohydrates, more than proteins, just a little bit less than fats. And so alcohol is not a nutrient, but it's full of calories. It is energy or calorie dense. It is not nutrient dense. And so consumption of alcohol is the consumption of empty calories. Okay. For some, alcohol adds to the enjoyment of a meal or social gatherings. Moderate use maybe relieves tension and provides relaxation. However, moderate use does come with issues. We'll talk about those towards the end of the chapter. And it can escalate to an alcohol use disorder or alcohol abuse. Okay, alcohol is a narcotic. It reduces sensations and consciousness. It is a central nervous system depressant. Okay, those things make it a narcotic. It is the most commonly abused drug in North America. So again, that includes the United States and Canada. And alcohol use disorders, alcohol abuse, is the 3rd leading cause of preventable death in the United States. The CDC estimates that about 380 deaths occur every day due to excessive alcohol use. And again, these deaths are preventable. So if individuals did not drink alcohol, they would not have died. The World Health Organization, WHO, published a statement in the Lancet Public Health. This is a prominent peer-reviewed medical journal. And the statement that they published was, when it comes to alcohol consumption, there is no safe amount that does not have negative health effects, so affect health. And that was published in 2013. And so, oftentimes we say everything in moderation. This kind of goes against that. When it comes to alcohol consumption, there is no safe amount. Okay. Alcohol is a toxic, psychoactive, dependence-producing substance that has been classified as a Group 1 carcinogen. Okay, currently, again, we're still in the 2020-2025 guidelines, dietary guidelines. This is what those guidelines state. Alcoholic beverages. Adults of legal drinking age can choose not to drink or to drink in moderation by limiting intake to 2 or less drinks a day for men and 1 or less drinks a day for women when alcohol is consumed. Drinking less is better for health than drinking more. And there are some adults who should not drink alcohol at all, such as women who are pregnant or women who are breastfeeding. I'm curious to see what the next set of guidelines will look like. Thinking about what was published in 2023, after these dietary guidelines were published, by the WHO and the Lancet. And so it's going to be interesting. There have been talks about warning labels on alcohol, that it is a narcotic, that it is toxic, that it does nothing, doesn't have any healthy outcomes. Okay. And again, we'll come back to this towards the end of the chapter. Okay. So sources of alcohol. First off, the form of alcohol that we consume is chemically known as ethanol. And so ethanol is shown here on the left. That's its chemical structure. We there's certain beverages that supply ethanol, such as beer, wine, distilled spirits, which include hard liquors like vodka, tequila, and rum, liqueurs, cordials, and hard ciders. All of these would contain ethanol. Okay. Alcohol can also be used as an ingredient in food. And although many people are under the assumption that cooking alcohol when you're using it in recipes the alcohol is going to completely be cooked out of the food, and that's not always true. So yes, some alcohol will evaporate when it's heated, but that depends on temperature, duration of cooking, the cooking method. Some alcohol does remain in most dishes even after it's cooked. Okay, the amount, it depends. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this table. And so alcoholic beverages, they vary in alcohol content, and therefore they also vary in calorie content. So our first group of alcoholic beverages here are beers. And so, this is a very limited list of how beers can come. Beers can be 5% alcohol by volume. So ABV, this is alcohol by volume. However, there are beers that are much higher in alcohol by volume. Some exceed 11%. So again, it's going to vary. But here on this list, we've got regular, light, and ultralight. And if the ounces are the same, so if they're all 12 ounces, regular beer is going to have the highest grams of alcohol. And as we go down to ultralight, these have less alcohol. And so the lower the alcohol, the lower the calorie content. Okay, and we'll talk about how to actually get these mathematically in just a minute. Okay, if we go down and we look at wines again vary from 5 to 14% alcohol by volume up to 22%. So it depends on what kind of wine you're drinking. The serving size here is 5 ounces, and again, if you're not measuring, it's easy to pour more than 5 ounces, right? And so some wines are going to be 14%, but if you're drinking a dessert wine, that could be 14 grams of alcohol. But if you're drinking a dessert wine, which is very sweet, this may be higher in alcohol, so it may have 23 grams. And again, that's going to affect the calories. Distilled spirits, so if we go up here, we're looking at gin, rum, vodka, bourbon, tequila, whiskey. Okay, alcohol content on these types of bottles will be listed as proof instead of a percentage, instead of alcohol by volume. Proof is 2 times the percent alcohol by volume. So for example, if you're drinking vodka that's 80 proof, the alcohol by volume would be twice, that's 80 proof. The alcohol by volume is going to be half of that, so 40%. Okay, so if I come up here, the amount that you're going to drink is much smaller. You're going to have a shot glass worth, which is about 1.5 ounces. Okay, if your shot glass has a spot to measure. If not, it's easy to pour more. And again, the alcohol per gram in a 1.5 ounce shot is going to be 14 grams. Okay, and again, you can see here the calorie content. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to think if there was anything else on here that I wanted to tell you. Oh, when you get into mixed drinks, okay? So mixed drinks are not going to only have alcohol, but they're also going to have, mixers. And so some mixers have carbohydrates, and so therefore they have calories. It all depends on what you're choosing, to mix with your distilled spirits, okay? So for example, a martini, could be up to, 220 calories. If you're having, a gin or a vodka martini, look, only 95 times, 2 calories would be from there. So there's not too much in there besides the alcohol, right? Because this is a 3.5 ounce. But it depends on how much alcohol is in there. The mixer could be supplying some of that. Okay. Same thing down here, margarita, low calorie, only 100. So again, it all depends. Okay. Okay, so a standard alcoholic drink is going to provide 14 grams of alcohol. Now, what constitutes a standard size? It depends on the alcohol by volume. So a standard size drink, we also call a drink equivalent. Again, this would be 14 grams of alcohol. This is how you calculate that. So one drink equivalent or one standard drink has 14 grams of alcohol. So how do you know how many drink equivalents or standard drink equivalents are present in an alcoholic beverage? So here we go. You're going to take the volume of the drink in ounces. Okay, so for example, for this beer right here, this would be 12 ounces. You're going to multiply that by, you got to do in the parentheses first, okay? You're going to take the alcohol content in decimals. So again, if I'm looking at this beer, this is a 5% alcohol by volume. Okay, so that's going to be 0.05 because you have to convert the percent to a decimal, divided by 0.6. Okay, that's 0.6. This is the ounces per drink equivalent. Okay, so let's do an example. So this beer, we'll do this first. So a 12 ounce, 5% alcohol by volume, that should be a V, sorry, not a C, not ABC beer, it should be ABV beer, fine. Here, this is how we calculate it. So you're going to do 12, so 12 ounces times 0.05, so this is the 5% divided by 0.6. Okay, so do what's in the parentheses first. Okay, so 0.05 divided by 0.6 times 12. You should get 1. Okay, so this beer right here, this 12 ounce, 5% ABV beer is equal to 1 drink equivalent. I can go on and I can ask you, okay, how many calories are in this? And so 1 drink equivalent is equal to 14 grams of alcohol. And remember that there are 7 kilocalories per gram of alcohol. So I could do 14 times 7, and I figure out this beer right here has 98 kilocalories from alcohol. Okay, there can be other things inside of this beer, like carbohydrates, that add to that calorie count that bring it up. But for just the alcohol part, it would be 98 kilocalories. Okay, let's do another example. Let's say we have a 16 ounce glass of beer that is now 7% alcohol by volume. Okay, so again, we're going to plug in our numbers. 16, that's the ounces, times, we're going to change this percent to a decimal, so 0.07, divided by that same number. It's always going to be divided by 0.6. And if you do this math, you should get about 1.9 drink equivalents. So drinking this beer is equal to drinking almost 2 drink equivalents. Okay, so how many grams of alcohol? You take the number of drink equivalents, 1.9, times 14, because there's 14 grams of alcohol per 1 drink equivalent. If you do that math, you get 26.6 grams. Okay, so that's how many grams of alcohol are in this drink. And then if I want to know how many calories are in this drink, I got to take the grams of alcohol, multiply it by 7 because there's 7 calories per gram of alcohol, and I get 186.2 kilocalories within this beer that are attributed again to alcohol. It may be higher in calories because of carbohydrates. So if I were to compare these two drinks, okay, this beer obviously has more calories. I am getting a few more ounces. Okay, however, look at the percents. So a 7% beer is going to have higher calories than a 5% beer. Okay, so there will be some problems in the lecture assessment where you'll have to go through and do some of this math. Okay, so if you need to come back and watch this, here's where it's at. Okay, so drinking in moderation. again, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommends that any alcohol consumption should be done in moderation. Again, the WHO has stated that any alcohol consumption is not great. Okay, so what exactly does drinking in moderation mean? It means no more than one alcoholic drink equivalent per day for women. Okay, so we have to be careful. You can't have an 8-ounce glass of wine and say, I'm only having 1 glass of wine a night. That's more than 1 drink equivalent. And then for men, it's no more than 2 alcoholic drink equivalents per day. Something else that you cannot do, you cannot not drink all week long and safely consume, several drinks on a single occasion. You can't save it up for a Friday night. That is binge drinking, and there are dangers that come with binge drinking. Okay, and again, there is no safe level of alcohol consumption for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding. Okay, so we're going to switch gears just a bit. We're going to talk about alcohol production, and we're just going to briefly talk about this. So the alcohol that we consume is produced by a process called fermentation. And we're actually going to learn about fermentation in a later chapter. I believe it's the next chapter. It is a process by which yeast, so single-celled organisms, they belong to the kingdom fungi, so they're actually a type of fungus. Yeast are going to be fed carbohydrates and water, and yeast will do this process called fermentation, where they convert the carbohydrates in the food that they're fed to alcohol and carbon dioxide. And the alcohol is the product that we're interested in. Okay, so what can be fermented? Lots of different things. Grains, cereals, fruits, honey, milk, potatoes, and other carbohydrate-rich foods can be used to make alcoholic beverages. The picture shown here, tequila is made by fermenting the juice of agave plants, and so this is a field of agave plants. After fermentation occurs, what happens is the distilling process. And so the distilling process, the alcohol actually gets boiled off. It becomes a vapor. Vapors are collected, and then they're condensed back down to their liquid form. Okay, so it's quite the process. But fermentation is essential. So I think I'm going to pause here. We'll pick up 8.2 in the next video.